bringing you a video on a Monday instead of a Wednesday this week, and we have partnered up once again with Home Depot with a perspective program to build the workshop table of my dreams with my homegirl Lindsay from Woodbrains. I'll link her YouTube down below. She actually created Callie out of wood. But back to our regular scheduled program, we're gonna get started. So I don't want to have to buy all new wood. There's no point to do that. So basically we're gonna take this guy apart. We bought 2 new sheets of plywood to replace the bottom, the top, and make the table. But we're just gonna work with what we got. It's not the worst build in the world, but it was my first table. So there's definitely things that could be cleaned up and fixed. Like, what is that, Rachel? What is that? I definitely cannot take credit for the plans you're going to see Lindsay and I execute for the base of this workbench. I came across this blog called Bitter to DIY, and it was exactly what I was looking for. I linked that down in the description box down below if you're looking for a cut list or material list, because they did it flawlessly. Lindsay and I just spent some time taking apart this workbench. We actually didn't have to take the entire thing apart since the base of it that would hold the bottom piece of plywood was pretty solid. This build is actually very simple. You have a bottom frame that you screw your legs into on the inside, and you can put rolling casters on the bottom that lock, which are totally up to you. And those 2 legs on the right hand side are different sizes because originally I didn't have my table saw in here, so when I wanted to add it, I just had to cut one of them out since I couldn't center the table to both of them. So Lindsay and I decided to kind of divide and conquer. She was going to finish out the bottom by cutting out that piece of plywood for the bottom shelf, and I was going to create the top frame and cut out the top piece of plywood. Like I said before, this video is sponsored by Home Depot and their perspective program, so I wanted to check out if I could cut down all the wood for my workshop table with this rigid Octane TM 18 volt 7¼ inch circular saw. This rigid circular saw actually is a premium rigid offer, and there's an option for a free tool with purchase with their qualifying kits. It's industry leading 2 11/16 depth of cut, and it's 30% more powerful than the previous version. The toggle to turn on is up at the top, which is super natural, and then the safety toggle for to actually, you have to press that down first in order for it to turn on, is right above it. You do not need to hold the top toggle down the entire time. Once you press that down and then you press the bottom one on, you can let go and cut naturally with the handle up at front. It does include a vacuum adapter because it has an integrated dust chute, but this thing also bevels from 0 to 56 degrees. I love that when you unlock the bevel and you start to move it, it clicks into place, which is really helpful. And when you want to adjust the depth of the cut, it's the same situation. You unlock it on the back end, you pull it up or down, and it will click into place, and then you switch it to the lock position. First cut we're going to do for our new build is just to make sure all our legs are the same length. So we measured and cut out a new leg for that one side where that shorter stubby one was. And then we screwed them together in the shape of an L. Again, all the plans and cuts and details are from Bitter to DIY, which I linked down below for you. I correct what I said before. Now Lindsay and I started to divide and conquer. I measured and cut out the frame of 2x4s to match the base frame to be the top of my table. I cut 2 2x4s to 72 inches to be the length of my table, and then I cut the 3 2x4s that would be the support to be the depth of my table, or width of my table, if you will. I'm not going to be doing 3 supports all the way because I am going to be adding that table saw. That is why you just see 2. I screwed that together and then moved on to ripping down plywood with that rigid circular saw, and honestly, you guys, this thing packs a punch, and what I love the most is when you take your finger off of that switch, it literally stops within seconds. That blade does not keep rolling like my old one, so out with the old, completely in with this new one. Lindsay was working on the bottom piece by using the jigsaw to notch out where the legs are so it could fit directly into place. Before adding that bottom piece of plywood, we added 1 more 2x4 to be the support for where the table saw is going to go. Secured that into place with some wood screws, and we moved on to create the support beams and basically the little shelf for the table saw. Bitter to DIY dialed this so good. I don't know how it looks so flawless in her blog execution, but this took Lindsay and I a couple of times to get right. You want to make sure that you are creating that shelf and tabletop where the table saw is going to go at the height that will match the top of your table to be flush with where you're running your wood, and that will make sense in 2 seconds. You also want to ensure, because I almost drilled it in to be completely flush to the table saw, make way for your fence. That way it can slide back and forth with ease. Lindsay started pre-drilling holes into the top piece of plywood so it didn't split, and I followed behind with some wood screws, and we were done with the base of this table. But unfortunately, Lindsay can't be with me for the remainder of this build, but thank you, girl, so much for your help. I literally would have been so frustrated without you. I already have so much more space with this table, with the table saw being lifted up and those shelves being gone, but now I want to add my personal tweaks and accessories to make this my actual dream workshop table. I decided why not use literally every inch of space that I can, so this is kind of a one-stop shop. I had some pegboard on hand because I did the pegboard behind my workshop table. I cut that out down to size to the little slivers that are underneath the table saw, and I just screwed those into place. Instead of making the wood storage shelf out of 2x4s, Lindsay suggested making them out of 1x2, so that's exactly what I did. It's literally the same exact frame that I made for the top and the bottom of this table, just with 1x2s. Not sure why this is so bright I overexposed it, but I lined this shelf frame up with the frame of where the table saw is, leaving room for the plywood, because when you add the plywood on top, it should just make everything nice and flush. The corner of the 1x2 frame is connected on the inside corners of the legs of the workshop table. I added my plywood, but you're gonna see it in the end result. I moved on to adding, oh, I'm so excited about this, a place where I can put craft paper or white paper to do flat lays, or just an area to work and not necessarily mess up the wood top table every single time. I drilled with a Forstner bit through a scrap piece of 2x4 to fit the dowel that I had on hand, which I believe was 1 inch. So I drilled 2 of these 2x4s and then connected them to the other end of my workshop table, and no, this is not gonna get in the way of my wood storage, aligned with the inside corner of the frame. That way, when you insert your dowel through one side, you go through the roll of craft paper, pop it out to the other side, and bada bing, bada boom. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I'm just very excited about this. You'll have to wait for the reveal to see me use it, but now we're going to be adding a table extension, and I found this inspiration photo off of Ryobi Nation, which I linked for you down below. I added 3 door hinges that I had on hand to the other side of my table, like that isn't the quote-unquote front of my workshop table. I'm not doing a huge extension, so I just built a tiny one that would fit within the craft paper and the end of the table. So now I'm just gonna screw in the hinges to the extra piece of plywood that I had to add to compensate for that 2x4 right there, so this frame could fit snugly underneath. Legit, everything is going wrong right now. I'm having to rebuild that, so I'm interested to see. All right, we need this much space. Okay, I'm about to break this thing in half if it doesn't work right now and call it a day because I'm so over it. The only thing I had to change was flipping that frame to be on the 2 side versus the 4, so it was like a thinner frame. And then I added these brackets that are amazing. They're like pop-out brackets that I found on Amazon. I'll link them down below for you, and simply place them where I wanted the legs of the workshop table extension to be and screw them directly into place. Now, just so you know, these legs will only lock out into place. When you fold them in, they will not lock into place. So I added these little toggle bolt hooks and screwed them where they made sense for my length of an extension. So that way, when I close the table, they weren't like flipping and flopping everywhere, and you can lock them up and then let them lock out when you're actually using the table. I added my final detail of skateboard scrap mitered corners and just loaded this guy up, and I am so ridiculously excited about this build, you guys. You have no idea. And voila, everybody's dream workshop table is going to be different. Your budget is going to be different. The size of which you can build is going to be different. But what I hope you walk away with this is that you can literally make the workshop table of your dreams. Anything is possible when you want to DIY it. I wanted to show you how I would naturally use this. You can move the fence to either side of the table saw if needed. There is a ton of room below for tools that I might not have storage elsewhere in my shop for. The wood storage right there is minimal because I have a whole wood storage wall. One of my vacuums always seems to be in the way, and because I raised that wood storage shelf up, I'm able to fit my vacuum directly underneath my table saw. Maximum storage right there, people. There are probably a million ways to do this glamorously for this table extension, but for my first go at it, I am ecstatic because I just love being able to have the opportunity to have extra space, not only just more space to DIY, but because if I have a 8x4 sheet of plywood, I can now rip this down with a lot more ease than I did before with a skinnier workbench. I'm curious if any of you that do have a workshop table or have built one, if you guys have done a table extension, what legs have you used, or what different brackets, or did you DIY something that could flip out? I'm very interested to know. And then the weird small detail that I'm super into is this craft paper moment. I can switch out the colors like I said before, and the more I'm using this or the more I'm messing around with it, I'm realizing how awesome this is gonna be when I have to wrap a bunch of presents for Christmas. Thank you so much to Home Depot for sponsoring today's video. If you guys want to see even more detailed shots, I will be posting them on my Instagram later today or this week. I'm not quite sure. I want to photograph it just right. I hope that you guys enjoyed the process of me upgrading my workshop table. And also, if you guys want to buy your own rigid octane circular saw, I linked it down below for you guys, alongside all the other creators that inspired this build. I'm posting today instead of Wednesday, but I am doing another live DIY Sunday. I will see you Wednesday or next Wednesday for another tutorial, but see you Sunday for a live.